Formula One is known for its heroic speed, incredible cars, and the crazy levels of glamour and luxury that come with the sport. The 2025 F1 season is back, just like I am, and having seen all the cars, it's time to do some serious talk about which is the most competitive, which looks the best, and whether the cars are better than the drivers' girlfriends. That's right, we're playing F1 Tinder. I've got it up on my phone. Do we swipe right for the car, or do we swipe left and go with the girl? Let's find out. Alright, I got my phone, I've got some photos up of the cars, let's see what we got. Oh nice, would you look at that? We've got Mercedes straight off, and this is the W16. Let's just have a quick flick through and see what we've got. Yeah, I mean, it looks like Mercedes have kind of gone back to the silver livery with the W16, which is funny because I'm sure Toto Wolff said that he would keep it black for Lewis, but Lewis is gone and clearly the mostly black livery is gone as well. Personally, I'm pretty happy about that. I mean, I love the classic silver arrows look. I think that silver stretching back from the nose and then blending into the engine cover, I think that looks great. That's like a really nice fade. With so many cars having loads of black on them, the F1 grid can look pretty samey sometimes, especially when you see a big pack of cars like when they've just gone off the line at the start of a race. So it's really nice to have a bit of colour back on the Mercedes, just to help it stand out a little bit from the likes of Sauber and Haas. Well, I mean, silver's hardly a colour, but you get what I mean anyway, it stands out a bit more. It is a bit of a shame to see that red Ineos airbox gone, which I really used to like, but I guess with the 1/3 part owners of Mercedes basically going bankrupt, maybe they couldn't afford the space on the car anymore or something like that. So everything the team has been saying about the car so far sounds pretty positive, and I'm recording this on Friday after the first two free practices before Melbourne. But Mercedes looked pretty good, I thought. Their times were pretty okay. During pre-season practice, George Russell set some pretty competitive times and the long run pace looked good. Obviously, Andrea Kimi Antonelli is going to need some time to settle in, just in the same way that, I don't know, Liam Lawson's going to at Red Bull by the looks of things. But overall, I think this car, especially with its looks, is pretty good, and it looks like it could be less terrible than it has been in recent seasons. So that Mercedes is on our swipe right, which isn't too bad. But on the other side, we have Carmen Montero Munt, which is George Russell's longtime girlfriend. Now, Carmen isn't really what you'd expect from an F1 driver's girlfriend. She isn't a jet-setting model using her boyfriend to leverage a massive Instagram following to further her own career. No, born in Spain, she studied at the University of Westminster before finding work in the investment industry. She's reportedly very down-to-earth and a friendly person, and while she and George like to keep their private life private, she is seen around the paddock supporting her partner when she has a chance. Clearly, she's an intelligent and driven woman with her own life goals, but who's also there supporting her partner, which is great to see. So while the new Mercedes might look like a bit of improvement, it's still not the most exciting car in the world, and considering Mercedes really haven't shown the ability to improve a car over the last few years, I'm going to swipe left for Carmen. Okay, here we go. It's Sauber. This is the car that no one wanted to see. I know it looked awful at the livery reveal event, but actually, in the light of day, it's not quite so bad. I'd probably go as far as saying I don't actually hate it, which is a compliment, I think, compared to last year's car. In all likelihood, it is going to be absolutely plumb last this season, and it has almost nothing interesting and exciting going on for it, but the livery is a massive improvement. It isn't highlighter green anymore, which is a definite plus, and it's not just boxed off with colour in random places as well, so, you know, big improvement from the Sauber guys. I already said that I like a fade, and the one on the Sauber it's pretty nice. It's a good fade. It looks like they splashed out for a bit of extra pigment in the green paint as well. It kind of looks like it's got a bit more depth to it, which is really nice. I mean, it is still mostly just carbon fibre and black paint, but at least it looks like someone tried to make a design instead of just giving a mechanic some tape and a paint tin and saying, you know, do whatever you want, which is what the old one looked like. Now, unfortunately for Nico Hulkenberg, he's going to have the honour of driving this car in 2025, before it becomes an Audi and hopefully slightly more competitive for him in 2026. So on the other side of this swipe left, swipe right choice, we've got Egle Hulkenberg, or Sunny, as she's apparently goes by in the paddock. Now, Sunny runs a successful fashion business called Egle, which sells high-end crocheted clothes and goes by Crochet Girl on Instagram. She's tall, she's glamorous, she's intelligent, and runs a successful business, so what isn't to like? Well, she hasn't got a fade, and she doesn't offer the opportunity to drive what may turn out to be one of the worst F1 cars in recent memory, so I think I'm going to swipe right on this one. Oh, okay. I'll be honest, I have a soft spot for Aston Martin. I love that green that they use on the cars. I love the fact Fernando Alonso is still with the team, and I love the brand outside of F1 as well. I think the cars Aston Martin make are absolutely stunning. But this is a very serious look at the cars, so I'm not going to let any of that cloud my judgment. Now, the Aston Martin is a decent change from last year's car on the technical side, which is obviously a very good thing considering they finished last season in absolute no man's land, probably 8th fastest on the grid. Now, they've moved to an overbite side pod and the underside is much smoother. That overbite with the smoother underside and the massive trench they have down the middle of their side pod should mean plenty of nice energetic air getting onto their beam wing and diffuser for loads of back-end downforce. There's new geometry on the front suspension, they've got a new floor as well obviously, which should all make the car more drivable, which seemed to be a problem last season for Aston. Looks-wise though, well, if I'm completely honest here, at a glance, it is basically the exact same car as last year. But overall, I think it looks like they've done a lot in the off-season, which is obviously great, and even though it is kind of the same livery, it is a good-looking car. Now, my swipe left option here is Fernando Alonso's newest girlfriend, Melissa Jimenez. Now, the 36-year-old journalist works for DAZN, which is presumably how the two of them met. She has a massive following on social media with just shy of 650,000 Instagram followers, but her whole brand is built without the help of Alonso. The two of them mostly keep their relationship private. She's had a pretty incredible career working in MotoGP for the likes of Massa and Sky before moving to F1 with DAZN in 2022. Considering she's basically had the career that I dream of at night, and the Aston Martin, despite those technical changes, is probably still going to be in no man's land. I think I'm going to swipe left for Melissa because nepotism really is the best way to get a job at F1 broadcasting. Oh yeah. This is a nice one. This is a nice one. This might offend some of you, but I prefer this shade of red that Ferrari sometimes uses to like the really classic bright red. I don't know what they call it, but I think it's a really, really nice colour. And probably even more controversially, I don't mind the HP logo on the engine cover. I really like that white stripe that they've got, that it sits on, and I don't think the HP logo colouring ruins it all for me either. Looks-wise, it's such a massive upgrade on last year's car, which wasn't bad looking, but this looks great. You can rip me in the comments section if you want, but that's just how I feel. Technically wise, Ferrari are claiming it's a brand new car, which is probably an exaggeration, but there are a lot of changes. They've gone from pushrod to pull rod at the front, which is meant to be better from an aerodynamic standpoint of these regulations. Apparently Ferrari had felt they'd hit a wall in the aero development with the old suspension, so this change was necessary for them to find more performance. So it's got a new, pretty sexy livery. It's got some brave mechanical changes. There's not really a lot to dislike about this Ferrari. Now that's a pretty tempting swipe right. But on the swipe left of this, we've got Charles Leclerc's girlfriend, Alexandra. Now, with over 1.5 million followers on Instagram and almost the same again on TikTok, Alexandra is far more popular than some of the drivers on the current grid. Her huge following is based on a reputation as a fashion icon, apparently. Despite her superstar boyfriend, Alexandra rarely posts anything with Charles, and much of the following comes off the back of her own work, so fair play to her. Despite her obvious attraction as an influencer, that isn't actually her full-time job. Yeah, she actually studied history of art, specializing in the 20th century at l'École de Louvre, and has worked as an art assistant at the auction house Hotel de Ventes de Monte Carlo, and in public relations at Monaco Art Week. That's impressive, probably. If you're in the art world, you have to let me know. Clearly an intelligent woman with a budding career in the art world. She is making this a tough decision, but that Ferrari is absolutely stunning, so I'm going to swipe right on this one. This is unmistakably a Williams. You can't miss this car at all. I love how much colour they've got on this car. It's so great to see a team that isn't afraid to actually use some paint. Now, the genius of the Duracell branding returns to the top of the car as well, which me and I'm sure all of you absolutely love. Now, technically, there isn't anything particularly exciting about this car though. The rear suspension has gone from a pull rod to a push rod, but it's still just bought from Mercedes, so that's what they've been given. Now, the combo of a new transmission and suspension from Mercedes should improve the rear end of the car. The whole back end with this new transmission and suspension is much thinner, so a lot more air can travel onto the beam wing and over the diffuser, which is all good stuff for downforce production at the back of the car. That improvement's been pretty visible so far. Carlos Sainz in particular, in pre-season testing and on Friday in Melbourne, has looked very fast at times. So, despite the car not really appearing to be a revolution in design, what they've done is clearly working well. Good looking car, potentially surprising, well actually not even potentially, already surprising performance. But do I prefer it to Rebecca Donaldson? The Scottish fashion model is currently dating Carlos Sainz and has graced the covers of Elle, Vogue and Harper's Bazaar internationally, so she's obviously doing something right. The two keep their relationship to themselves, but we do know that they spent Christmas in the Maldives together, which is a decision that I fully support. She's a full-on F1 fan, she's attending a handful of races every year when she's got time, and that's something I know that we all aspire to do. Look, as much as that Williams looks like it's going somewhere, I know it's not the Maldives wherever it is going, so I'm going to swipe left for Rebecca, I think. Yes, okay, so if you've watched a few of my videos, you're going to know that I've got a bit of a soft spot for Haas, and this new livery is a massive win for me. I love that they've inverted the white and the black on the side pod, so the Haas name is in black on a white background. I think that stands out a bit more. Again, the less that every car looks the same, the better in my opinion. They've also changed the shape of the shark fin as well, so it's got this like really nice sloping rear, which culminates in a nice bit of technical innovation. Haas have done this cutout in the rear wing, separating the main face from the upright, which will dump a load of drag and a little bit of downforce with it, but you've got to, win somewhere, lose somewhere, it all balances out. Now, Haas have really changed the bones of the car as well, with a brand new monocoque, which has allowed a lot of little aerodynamic tweaks. Perhaps the biggest thing for Haas is what they haven't done. Now, the front suspension is not the new Ferrari spec, which you would expect them to take, because that's what historically they've done. They've taken everything they can from Ferrari. Instead, they're using the old Ferrari front suspension, so it's push rod rather than the new pull rod which Ferrari have made. Haas apparently thought that there was more performance for them to find in the old setup, so decided to stick with it. Now, moving away from Ferrari is a bold new world for Haas, which I'm completely here for, and as this technical partnership with Toyota deepens, I'm sure that's going to carry on. But looking at Friday's times from Melbourne, it's not working so far. So that's one side. On the other side, the car's going to be up against Flavie Bala, who is Esteban Ocon's girlfriend. Now, the French woman is a medical student at the moment who does a lot of influencer work on the side. She's also appeared in several beauty pageants, winning Miss Côte d'Azur in 2022 and coming 5th in Miss France in 2023. Now, I'm sure she's absolutely lovely, and the Haas might suck this season, but I'm just a real sucker for them, so I'm going to swipe right for the VF25, I think. Okay, speaking of cars that have brightened up a bit, this new Racing Bull looks perfect. So good. It really reminds me of the 2021 Turkish Grand Prix livery that Red Bull used, and that looked absolutely amazing as well. If this isn't your favourite livery on the grid this year, then honestly, you probably just shouldn't watch F1 anymore. Obviously do what you want, but this car is gorgeous and it should be your favourite on the grid. Now, in pre-season practice, it didn't look like the team had the car to go with this livery, but in Friday in Melbourne, Yuki Tsunoda in particular has looked absolutely rapid. The Racing Bulls said after pre-season practice that they were aware that they didn't have the performance that they wanted to be fighting at the front of the midfield, but whatever they've done in the couple of weeks between then and the Melbourne Grand Prix has obviously worked, because they're looking great. F1's own predictions had them second slowest ahead of only Sauber, but from what I saw on Friday in Melbourne, that's definitely not going to be true. Apparently, the issue was that the stuff that they were doing in the factory wasn't matching up to what was happening on track, so this Melbourne performance could just be a one-off, but we'll have to wait a few more races to see. Now, Isaac Hajar and Yuki Tsunoda are going to have to hope that this car is as good as it's looked in Melbourne, because neither of them has a girlfriend, so it's going to be a pretty bad year if the car is rubbish and they're single the entire time. However, that does make this decision pretty easy, so I'm going to go for this beautiful looking V-Carbo 2, thank you very much. Oh, yeah, I wasn't looking forward to this one. I know I said a few times now that I prefer colour, and I do, but this Alpine just doesn't look good in my opinion. All the nice livery reveal photos made it look bright and colourful, but then when you see it on track, it's actually pretty dull. And from the front, it is a lot of pink. As a lot of pink, which is too much for me personally. However, on the technical front, Alpine appear to have carried their strong finish in 2024 into this year. It looks like that they could be fighting somewhere towards the front of the midfield, obviously depending on if the Racing Bulls are actually the third fastest team on the grid or not. Technically though, again, there doesn't appear to be a massive amount different, kind of like with Williams. The suspension at the back has been altered to introduce a little bit more anti-lift, but in terms of like big changes, that's kind of it. However, I don't know, they've probably done a lot of work to the floor and to the internals as well. Weight's always been a problem with these Alpine cars. So there's a lot of things that they could have done which have added performance, which we clearly just can't see. Now, on the other side of this decision, we've got Francisca Sequeira Gomez, who is Pierre Gasly's partner. Known as Kika, she has a huge social media following and documents her travels, her modelling career, and her relationship with a French driver on Instagram. Born in Portugal, she's a daughter of Goncalo Gomez, who's a professional driver for McLaren and also works as a host at Formula One races for people who want to spend megabucks on tickets, which sounds like a pretty sweet job to me. Pierre has described her as his lucky charm, and apparently the two are the perfect match. Now, given the choice between this rather ugly but maybe moderately quick car and Kika, I think I'm going to swipe left for her. Alright, yeah, well, guess what? It's yet another very uninspired Red Bull livery. You know what? I actually don't really have that much of a problem with teams reusing liveries over and over again, but at least make it a good one or an interesting one. I refuse to believe that anyone could see a picture of this car from a distance and tell me if it's the RB20 or the RB21. Even close up, the changes are hard to spot. Okay, well, the sponsors have moved around a bit, but you can't tell me that you know every Red Bull sponsor and where they sit on the old car compared to the new one. Now, sadly for Red Bull, while the livery has stayed the same, the performance definitely hasn't. The RB21 is, well, it's a competitive downgrade from last year, basically. The car isn't responding to setup and balance changes in the way they'd want, which is a massive problem because it shows that what's happening on track probably doesn't match up with what's happening in the factory, and that's a big worry for them. And on top of that, they've got understeer problems, which is just criminal in Formula One because an oversteering car is always going to be faster. I think with just a year left in these regulations, sorting out those problems and then investing in this car might be deemed a waste of funds by Christian Horner, which means Verstappen's probably going to do a lot of complaining this season. So just to summarise, for the swipe right, we've got a very boring looking car, which is going to be pretty boring to drive as well by the sounds of it. But on the left, we've got not Kelly Piquet. It's Liam Lawson's partner, Hannah St. John. Hannah is not a model, she's not an influencer either, she's actually just a California native who moved to Arizona to do a bachelor's in biomedical science, which means she's instantly more intelligent than I am. Liam actually attended her graduation as well, which is pretty cool. Fresh out of uni and without a job at the moment, I would expect. I think we're probably going to be seeing a lot of her in the back of the Red Bull garage. Now, let's be honest, even the Red Bull drivers at the moment aren't particularly excited about driving this Red Bull, so I'm going to swipe left again. Okay, here we go. Last car on the grid, and this, I think, is an example of where it's fine to keep the old livery because it looks good. Like the Red Bull, if you put this side by side with the 2024 car, you probably couldn't pick the new one over the old one, but I don't really care this time. I like the orange, it stands out, and when you see a big pack of cars fighting, you straight away know that's a McLaren, which is more than you can say for some of the cars. In terms of performance, this is the car you want to be in at the start of the season. Now again, I'm recording this before the season opening Grand Prix, but they look pretty heavy favourites to take the win in Melbourne, I think. Yeah, the car's been a standout in testing, confidence is going to be high in the team, they've set some pretty impressive times as well. Yeah, I can't actually think of anything negative to say about this car. That's going to be pretty tough to beat. But on the other side of this decision, we have Margherita Corceiro, or Magui, who Lando's been spotted with a number of times over the past few months, as well as being spotted together in Drive to Survive footage in the McLaren garage after the last race of the 2024 season. Surprisingly, the reports that the two had broken up last year, but it definitely appears they're back together. Magui is an actress and a model. She's been in a number of Portuguese TV dramas, as well as appearing on the Portuguese edition of Dancing with the Stars in 2020, which is pretty cool. As exciting as her blossoming acting career might be, that 2025 McLaren is far too good to pass up on, so I'm going to swipe right. Alright, what do you think though? If you could take any of the cars off the 2025 grid, which one would you choose? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you haven't already, make sure to check out our new long-form documentary video. It's on the crashes that changed F1 history. It took a ton of work, but I think it's absolutely excellent, so make sure to give it a watch. And until next time, drive safe and bye for now.